Every company has difference makers, the people who go above and beyond what's required. This podcast is dedicated to the people who challenge the status quo and make good companies great. Today, we're sharing one story from one company in our effort to inspire others. Welcome to Difference Makers. Today, my guest is Richard Milligan. Richard is founder of 4C Recruiting, speaker, author, and host of Recruiting Conversations podcast, strategist, and also a recruiting coach. Richard, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I've been waiting for this one for a while, so very excited to get started and get into it with you. Richard, I want to start with you, kind of go way back and kind of start where kind of your childhood and, things that you went through into your adulthood and how you came to be where you are right now. I can tell you that you've made an incredible difference on my business, on me personally, and understanding sort of the impact of social media today. This podcast is really because you opened my eyes to some things that we weren't doing before. And I really struggled with how to sort of get my brand out there and how to really get my name out there and really understanding this world today and how people communicate and how people form opinions of you. And I think one thing that really sticks in my mind is something you said to me. You said, people won't do business with you until they know who you are, what you stand for, and what you stand against. And they really don't do that on the phone anymore, and email's a dead technology. They do it through social media. And once I understood that concept, I got to tell you, man, the doors have just blown open for us here at Verity. So I want to say thank you for that before we get started.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did you first of all, you started in the mortgage business, correct?
Yeah, I did. Well,
how did that happen?
I got into the mortgage industry in 2002 when it was really easy to get into the mortgage industry. And very quickly opened up. I got in as a loan officer. My brother-in-law was actually a mortgage broker at the time. And I thought, if John can do this, I can do this. And so I 6 months in figured out how to launch my own brokerage. I had Reliant Mortgage Company all the way through 2007. And really, I didn't understand the industry, Jim. Like at the time, I'm cruising along thinking I understood it. My model was I'd figured out how to send direct mail to people with high interest rates and to refinance them into a better interest rate. And so I had a direct mail model. I knew down to the percentage point how much the phone was going to ring. I had just opened 5 new offices because I had figured I had a specific method that I was doing that I figured out. Along comes 2007, and I'm 5 years in, and I realized very quickly I didn't know much about the industry. And so was my first massive failure as a leader. It's hard to believe that was 14 years ago. Like Gavin was a newborn in the middle of all that crazy sauce. He's 14 years old right now. So
it's amazing what 2007 did to a lot of us. Really shined the light on our weaknesses. I know it did for me. I know it did for my partner and I. We thought we knew recruiting and the mortgage recruiting business, and we really didn't know, because had we been smart, we would have just shifted over to default servicing or something like that and at least been able to survive. But when the lights went out, we couldn't find the light switch, and we realized that we had made a big mistake as well by really just not really getting a full understanding of the entire business. And really, that to me, 2007 was a defining year for so many people, because you either just gave up and went elsewhere, or you picked yourself back up after a certain period of time and said, no, I'm gonna fight back. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna do this over again. And I hear so many stories of people that made their way back from that crash.
Yeah, it was I've definitely licked my wounds for an extended window of time. Because it was my first major failure. And I think some of the big ahas that I had in that is that, man, my identity was my success. And I became very aware of that. I was afraid people were going to know I was failing. I was afraid my wife was going to see me failing. And so for a long time, I would say I had this fig leaf where I was really covering up the failure, where I wasn't really stepping into it. I was paralyzed by it.
Mm.
34, you're still a young leader. You're still learning. And I didn't have any good mentorship around me, any good leadership around me to lean on. I really was on my own in the decisions that followed. And I learned a lot. I grew a lot, not just as a businessman, but also as a human being. I'm thankful. I look back, I would never go through '07, '08, '09 again, Jim. I don't know if you would go back and do that again, but I wouldn't.
I say
But
the same thing. I say the same thing. I say I don't ever want to go through that again, but I'm glad I did.
yeah, definitely grew me as a human being, made me a better man, having to go through that. And, I mean, I remember like some of you and I just briefly talked about this before we came in, but my larger story is that I grew up in poverty. I
Mm.
grew up in an abusive home. I was told my entire childhood, you don't have what it takes. You are never going to be successful. You're never going to amount to anything. You're always going to be a loser. I was told that by my parents, and so I left home at the age of 19 with a chip on my shoulder. And this chip on my shoulder was, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I have been uh, my life, I've been so driven for a large part through wrong motivators, not through healthy motivators. And those wrong motivators, took me to some great places. I was the youngest regional sales manager in a Fortune 500 company by the age of 27. Not because I was smart, because I was the hardest working person that you've ever met. I would outwork everybody, outlearn everybody, out strategize everybody. And so I'm cruising along in this journey to the age of 34. And my identity is that, like, all of the affirmation I got from it, it was where I found my fulfillment. And to have that pulled away and to really have to go back to a place where it's like, man, what is your motivator? I mean, I get into 2008, I can remember lying in bed and literally contemplating taking my own life. And how am I going to do it? What's it going to look like? Because I'm so afraid to face this failure in my life, because it was such a big part of my identity. My house was a part of my identity. My cars were a part of my identity. My just sitting on the stage in my community of being a successful business person within just not my family and my friends, but even my city, and having and losing everything. I mean, I lost everything, Jim. I lost my house, my cars, my business. I lost all of my friends that were quasi friends that disappeared when I didn't have money and had to start over again. And in those moments, some of the things I got clear on, I would never give up. One of the things I got clear on was I made a promise when I left home at the age of 19 that I was never going to live the way I grew up. And here I am in '07, '08, and it really feels like I'm going to live the way I grew up. It's like I wonder where my next tank of gas is going to come from, how am I going to generate income for my family. And our Gavin, who's 14 now, was a newborn at the time, and Ethan was 5. Those are my two oldest sons, and we now have two girls, two daughters. And Lee and I had been married for 8 years. And the only thing that got me out of bed each morning was knowing that I had to follow through on the promise that I made, that my family was not going to live like that. And so I got real clear. That was my largest motivator, was them. And I've been very clear on that since that window of time. It's put a brand new perspective on life and business and success, being clear on that.
That is powerful. That's that resonates with me too, and so many other people that I've spoken with. And thank you for just being so candid about it and honest, and just kind of being vulnerable, putting it out there. Um, how did you pick yourself up, Richard? So many people don't ever get up. They lay in the ditch, they roll over, and they lay there forever. How did you get up? I mean, obviously your family motivated you, but how did you do it? Where did you begin? What did you start doing?
Yeah. Well, one of the other factors that was in this that was a contributing factor was, at the time I was actually struggling with a gambling addiction, Jim. And I called it entertainment. I think my wife would have classified as entertainment, but it was a full-blown sports gambling addiction. I was placing 10, 15 bets a day. It would absorb my entire weekends. I would watch 8, 12, 16 hours of sports, on a Saturday. And so it was the perfect storm in that. I mean, I was making an incredible amount of money in 2007. I was the most money I had ever made at that time in my career. And I was covering up a lot of this this addiction that I had with the income that I was making. And man, when you pull all of that money away and you can't cover that up and you get exposed to that, how I got out of that, part of that played into the addiction that I had. And so one of the key things that I did in the next steps, when I said I got to get healthy, I got to get past this, is I just exposed the fact that I was an addict. I went to my wife and said, here's what's going on. This is what's true. It's not recreation. It's not just for fun. It's a real addiction. I went to my friends. A lot of my friends were gamblers too, and went to them and said that I'm struggling with this. I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. If you need to talk about gambling, or if you need to watch sports to participate in gambling, I'm not. I literally banned myself from watching sports for 2 years, Jim. I put myself, I just like, I got to create some very clear boundaries for myself and elevate accountability, which is just like, this is a success principle, period. Like, one of the things I've become aware of now as a coach is that, like, most people create very generic accountability structure around themselves. I think an
Hmm.
example of that would be just like, if I said I was going to get in the best shape of my life, and you asked me how I was going to do that, I might say, well, I joined the gym. And you would want to know what else I did, because that's not enough, right? Having a gym membership is not enough accountability. Paying $60 a month for that's not enough accountability to get me to the gym,
Hmm.
right? If I said that I've got somebody that's going to meet me there at 5 a.m., 5 days a week, now I'm creating accountability. But I could go another level and say, if I don't show up at the gym at 5 o'clock, you have the responsibility to come by my house, ring the doorbell, and get me out of bed. And if I had someone that was willing to do that, that's the highest level of accountability, right? Someone that's willing to walk with me, hold me accountable. And so it's a success principle. And so I went to all my friends and said, here's what's true. It was the hardest conversations I could have possibly ever had. I'm not going to gamble anymore. If you need to gamble or talk about gambling, I literally need to terminate the relationship because I can't do this anymore. And I lost probably 90% of all my relationships at the time because of that.
Hmm.
And that allowed me to create healthy structure. And that healthy structure gave me a foundation to begin building on again.
Amazing. A lot of people would not have been as resourceful or had the strength to say no and draw the line. I think maybe if you didn't have your family, it may not have even happened. Would you agree?
I would be dead today. I really think like when you I'm now removed from, I haven't actually placed a bet in since 2008. So I don't know what that is, 13 years. I'm now removed from a place where I have a different perspective on it. But going back those moments, it was out of control. It felt like it controlled me. It had
Hmm.
gotten to such a place where it controlled me. I have a lot of empathy for people that struggle with it, different forms of addiction because of that. But there's no doubt that if I wouldn't have had this
Well,
foundation, no doubt if I hadn't had this foundation in place of the family structure and a supportive wife, that I wouldn't be here today. I really think that I would have followed through and would have taken my own life.
well, thank God you didn't, because you had so many people ahead of you that needed to be impacted, and you've impacted thousands of people through your coaching and through your teaching, and some of the things that you're doing right now at 4C are really, really impactful. Let me ask you something. How did you pivot into the recruiting coaching field? I know you talk a little bit about this in some of your material, but you were, if you could share that with us, that would be great.
Yeah. So I got in the industry in 2002. We get to 2007. In 2008 and 9, I recreated myself. I went to the retail side of the mortgage industry and began building teams. Was an average recruiter from 2009 to 2013. I'd hired roughly 45 producers up in that window of time.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2013, I was with a company that went through a compensation change. I lost a lot of my income because I was producing while leading, and the compensation model for my position uh, I was gonna give about 60% of my compensation to produce, because I was gonna make less commission on it. And so I just said it was a pivotal moment. I can either continue just produce alone or lead, and my heart really yearned. I mean, that's a a strong word, but I really yearned to lead people. I really wanted to lead people. I wanted to impact people at that level. And I just felt like it was a calling, more than an obligation, right? It's like there was this
Hmm.
urge to do it. So I made a decision at the end of 2013 to give up all my personal production. I handed it off to people that were on my team, and I moved all in on leading and building teams, recruiting. And at the end of 2013, I took a couple of weeks and which is easy to do, relatively easy to do in the mortgage industry because Christmas, the New Year's is a downtime. I took a
Hmm.
couple of weeks and I just said, I got to build a recruiting system. And I still have to this day a piece of paper, and it's like a blank piece of paper with a bunch of lines drawn on. It's a grid, and it's 32 steps. And so this over the course of a couple of weeks, I mapped out 32 steps of that I was going to follow, because I always had been like this. My personality is that on a Colby index, I'm a quick starter. On a disc, I'm a high I. On a Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFP. And if you understand any of those personality profiles, you understand Richard does not naturally come to following systems. And
Mm.
so my entire life, one of my strengths is being able to communicate to people, navigating hard conversations with people, but systems is not part of that personality profile I just gave to you. And I said, I got to build a system because historically I just spontaneously combusted into recruiting efforts. I had never followed a process.
Hmm.
And so those 32 steps became that. I took those 32 steps. I found a whiteboard CRM. I mapped them inside the whiteboard CRM as like a next step. And at the beginning of 2014, I showed up with a completely different concept. And historically, I had been a recruiter that brought people to the organization. Where I was recruiting, the company was like the product, and I pivoted. A key pivot in that time was that I was on the board for a nonprofit organization called Family ID, and and ID stands for intentional direction, and we were helping families establish visions, mission statements, purpose statements, core value beliefs at a family level. And I had
Hmm.
begun to integrate this into my leadership, because I was like, well, if I'm going to do this at a family level, then I need to do it in my business. And I didn't have a vision of my business. I didn't understand my values as it related to my business. I definitely didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing, or able to articulate it at a level that people understood it. And so in this window of time, I'm like, fresh start. What am I going to communicate? I begin to communicate me as being the product, not the company being the product. So I showed up in 2014 with this 32-step system and basically a new message. And the message prior was the company's amazing. We're doing everything in this great way. And I'm
Mm.
like, let's talk about you, who you are as a human being first. Let's talk about me, who I am as a leader first. And
Hmm.
that process became the process that I coach around today. And what happened was, in the first 90 days of 2014, I set 38 what we would call open house visits or corporate site visits with branch managers that had teams. And you're talking to a guy who maybe set 4 of those each year, historically moving in the past. And I didn't fully understand what I was doing, or why what I was doing was working as well as it was working at the time. But in 2014, I launched 7 branches, and over the course of 3 years, hired hundreds of people. And so at the end of 2016, I made the pivot and opened 4C Recruiting, Jim, as what was going to be a third-party recruiting company, and very quickly realized that I signed 11 agreements with lenders, and realized that I was spending more time coaching people on how to get the lead that I was giving them across the finish line than anything. And I had
Hmm.
a CEO that said, would you be willing to coach our people, because I hear what you're doing and it's working. And I developed a coaching curriculum after starting this recruiting firm, and held a webinar in October of 2017 where I just went to my LinkedIn network and invited people into a free 90-minute, high level overview of recruiting. And at the end of that, I invited everyone into a coaching opportunity with me. And I had I think it was like 45 people signed up on the spot for my coaching.
Wow.
And it was just like, sometimes stars align. You're like, this is my calling.
Hmm.
And that was a moment for me that said, this is really my calling. This is what I need to be doing. And there's a big need for it, right? In that moment, I kind of had an epiphany. It was like, this makes complete sense. No one's teaching people to recruit. We're all coming to our own systems, our own processes, how we communicate. We're all doing it through either failing forward, or someone's telling us how to do it.
Hmm.
That's having some success doing it, but we're not really learning how to build a system around this. And so I've been all in since October 2017 in this area of coaching, recruiting leaders.
Yeah. What's the biggest misconception you think people have about recruiting, Richard?
It would depend on where we were. If you're talking about the people that are doing the recruiting, right? I think the biggest misconception is that we are trying to sell the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we take the company and we package it up like it's a widget, and when that's the offering that we have to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, I think I could show this to you. I just actually got this a couple minutes ago, so this will be appropriate. I just got a T-shirt concept approved, and if you can see that, I'll make it says it's Batman and Robin. It says you're a recruiter, or it says you're a recruiter question mark Robin, and Batman slaps him and says I'm a relationship builder. Okay, and so if there's like one big aha for the recruiter to have, it's like we're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to recruit people, right? Like there's a heart posture here that's necessary to be a successful recruiter. And I know
Yeah.
you that you have that heart posture. And that
Mm-hmm.
heart posture is like we have to build relationships because relationships bring trust, bring things like bonding and empathy and these things that matter when you're trying to motivate people to change. And so we are relationship builders first before we're recruiters. That's a big aha that a recruiter has to have.
Yeah, and then the process of building that relationship and being authentic, really not just saying, well, I'm going to go build relationships because that's going to get me more recruits. It actually has to be authentic, right? So you have to accept that you've been doing it wrong and understand the value is people and relationships. Once you get that built, your street cred goes through the roof. I think that for me, I've always approached it from a relationship standpoint. I've never really sort of chased the buck or the placement. I can't tell you how many people I've said, they've called me and I said, you really need to stay where you're at. It's a much better deal than what's going on out there in the market, and that's pretty rewarding too when they come back to you a couple of years later and say thank you for talking me off the ledge, and not allowing me to make that big mistake in my career because staying here was much better. Difference Makers is powered by Verity Search. In today's competitive war for talent, they understand recruiting requires having a strong sales and marketing approach. Recruiting is not posting jobs online and waiting for unqualified people to apply. It's active, it's engaging, and it's working with people while maintaining extreme confidentiality. Their solutions and techniques are innovative and brave, but based on industry knowledge and key identification strategies. Some of the key services include strategy planning, research, marketing, prospect identification, qualification, and recruitment across all markets and geographies. If you'd like more information, please check out the website at veritysearch.com. Tell me one of your greatest successes, Richard, in business. I know what your greatest success is personally. You have a beautiful family. Yeah.
Yes. In business, look, I think I'm in the sweet spot right now, Jim, where leaders that have struggled to recruit historically
Mm.
that show up and I get to spend 12 weeks with them. I mean, I can't tell you how much joy I have and like what I do. Like, well, I'm doing what I love today, and I think that's for people to stay pursuing that concept, that idea. Find that thing that you love doing. I'm doing what I love. I mean, just this week, I share these things with my wife because she's really the only person that celebrates these things like I do. But I'm like, check out this Facebook message. I got a message from someone who had no industry experience that got hired to do something that then that position got terminated. That they said, hey, we'll keep you, but the only position we would have for you would be for you to be a recruiter.
Mm.
And they hired me to coach her, and I spent 12 weeks with her, and she came in and she's like, I'm scared to make calls on the phone, like I've never recruited before. She sent me a screenshot of an email from her company, and she's the number one recruiter in her company. They were celebrating her, and she was like, you've changed my life. And it's regularly now that I have those opportunities, because a couple days later I got another message from someone in LinkedIn that said the same thing, like, I just hired this person, I'm changing their life only because you've taught me how to do this, you're changing my life. And I
Mm-hmm.
think as humans, we don't think that that's available. we think of like the job as a job, not a place where we can literally change the lives of other people. And
Hmm.
I think pursuing something that you fall in love with is worth it. I'm 48 years old, and I didn't start doing this until I was 44, 45. But that's it. That's the biggest life success, is actually coming to a place in my career where all of the experience and the loss and the failure and the wins are combined together to come to a place where I know that if I have a window of time with people that are open-handed and coachable and want to change and are willing to change, that I can literally change the trajectory of their career. And I say that with confidence, not from the position of someone trying to sell himself, because
Hmm.
I'm seeing it in real life.
You talk a lot about being an attractive leader. What does that mean?
Yeah, I created that framework in 2017 because I was trying to figure out some simplistic concept that people could grab onto to say, like, who do I need to become, or how do I create a framework for who I am as a product? And the attractive leader to me is this person that's operating in their passion zone. Right. When we think about recruiting, Jim, if I was given the permission to give a definition to recruiting in the Webster's dictionary, it would
Hmm.
simply be a transference of energy, a transference of passion. So leaders that are passionate leaders are easy to recruit for. You know that. And the reason why is that when they transfer that passion, people get inspired and motivated to make change. And so the attractive leader framework is really that. It's a leader that's living their passion zone. Now, I think that there are a couple of ingredients that put us in the passion zone. I think clarity of vision is part of that. Like, vision to me is this roadmap to what you want to achieve. It's definitely what you want to achieve, but it's being able to understand the roadmap to executing on that.
Hmm.
So that's part of that. I can get excited about that because we're painting a picture with a paintbrush, and it's now clear where I'm going, where I'm headed. Another part of this is being clear on what represents me. What are my beliefs? What are my core values? And what we're trying to help leaders do is ultimately do what they love with people they love while making a greater difference. And you can't do what you love with people you love if you're not clear on your core values, because everyone's a possibility for your team. When you get clear on your value system, it eliminates people from being a part of your team because they don't align with your value system.
Hmm.
So I think that core value system is part of that. And the other part is why. Like, what's this intrinsic cause or belief that inspires you to do more, to become more? Like, on the hard days, why would you get out of bed? Right. And so the leader that has those three things, that leader has the secret sauce, is operating in their passion zone. They are attractive to other people. There's something about them that's just like, I gotta get closer to the sun. There's something about them that people are drawn to. They're magnetic.
You have a way of painting a picture with words that I've always appreciated, and it makes it easy to digest concepts that way. It's one of the things that drew me to you when I actually hired you to coach us, a third party that has been recruiting for 30 years, and you've been a big influence for us as well. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you though, and I think I know the answer, but I want to ask you for everyone listening. Who who have been some of your greatest influencers?
Yeah, most of my career, Jim, I spent without any great leadership. I learned early on to pursue wisdom through books. I read about 50 books a year. I drove
Ooh.
3.5 hours one direction and back another direction on Sunday. I listened to a book. And so one of the coolest things is that I've been mentored by John Maxwell. I mean, I've read 30 plus books of John Maxwell's, like the 15-Year Irrefutable Laws of Growth, is a great book. Like, I've read a lot of his work. And so I've been mentored by John Maxwell. I've been mentored by a guy by the name of John Eldridge, who wrote the book Wild at Heart, and have followed his podcast very closely. I've been mentored by him. Craig Groeschel. We've been very closely aligned with Life Church, which is the fastest growing church in the United States. We've been going there since it was in a bicycle shop 24 years ago. Been mentored by him from a distance. And so I think one of the coolest things about the world that we live in today is that if I want to be mentored by someone, I am literally just a moment away from sitting at the information highway,
Hmm.
listening to all their podcasts, reading all their materials, to get to a place where I can literally be mentored by someone, not just at a slow speed, but actually at an accelerated speed today. So that's been a big part of that. I really haven't had I've had a couple of men along the way. Greg Gunn, who was the founder of Family ID. When I met Greg, I had to get close to Greg because one of my big life goals is to be a successful father and a successful husband. Greg is that. Greg has modeled that. I met Greg at an event and I immediately walked up to Greg and said, "How can I help in your nonprofit organization?" Because I knew I wanted to get closer to him because he had something that I didn't have, which is an understanding of how to do these things correctly. And I think for young people today, that right there is probably like the biggest thing they can grab onto is like mentorship's available. You have no idea. I had a young man in my inbox over the weekend that messaged me. And it seemed like he wanted a meeting, but I wasn't sure about it. And I literally just asked the question, "What's a win for you if we were to meet?" He wrote a 2-page letter. What would be a win for him if we met? Guess what? I sent him my live calendar link and said, "Let's get together." That's available to a lot of people today if they just pursue it. So you don't have to have a leader in your business or a leader immediately in your life that you're on a first name basis with. Look up. Right? If you look up today, you're going to see influencers that are doing things that you want to do. And it's just the principle of the path. Find someone that's ahead of you, that's already where you want to be, and you engage that person because there's always a straighter line between A and B than you pursuing it yourself. I mean, I told you part of my story. Like if someone could have told me that there was a straighter line between these two places, I would have followed that. So I think asking for mentorship is a key part of that, but also knowing that, look, this world is moving so fast today as leaders, we can't delegate understanding. You just can't delegate understanding. And how do you understand? You become knowledgeable about things, you're constantly learning, you're evolving yourself because this world's passing a lot of leaders by very quickly because they're delegating understanding.
Yeah. I'm going to venture to say Greg Gunn was a attractive leader.
Greg Gunn is living in his passion zone. If you met Greg, he would ooze all over you. He's so passionate about it, but he's clear on his vision, very clear in his core value system, and can articulate to you very clearly why he does what he does. And he doesn't even know. Greg doesn't even know the attractive leader framework. but if you sit with Greg, you'd be like, that guy right there needs a name tag. It's called an attractive leader.
Tell me, outside of your career, what are you most passionate about? What motivates you outside of business?
The things that I think about are bigger. I mean, I was having a conversation this morning with a group of men that I meet with each week, and we were talking about big things, legacy things. I had a moment. This had probably been about a decade ago. I had this moment where I went to a funeral, and the man was in his early 80s that had died. They had a beautiful montage, photos, videos, music, and it was very touching. And then they went to an open mic, and the open mic was, anyone here that knew him, we want to welcome you to the open mic to get up and to share a story or to tell how he impacted you. 3 people got up, and the stories that they told were very surface level stories. It was like, grandpa loved shotgun biscuits and sausage gravy on Saturday mornings. And I left there with my wife and I said, I just feel empty. Like there's just something about it. Is that the end of everything? Like when you get to the end, 3 people get up and share a funny story about hunting and cooking breakfast and these things, like, or is there more? And I want to believe that there's more available. Like if you live a life well, when you get to the end, what does that look like? It's that end to beginning framework, right? And so I have a very clear vision of what it looks like when I get to the end. And I want the line out the door at the microphone. And it isn't about me as much as it is about impact, right? It's not about like, what can I get? Because that line is not long if it's about Richard. That line is only long if it's about everybody else but Richard. Right. And so for me, I can visualize that. It's my family. It's definitely my friends. It's people in my business. Like, leaving people better for an encounter with you can be a core value, right? It doesn't always have to be, I have to win in order for you to win. Other people can win and you can lose. right? And I think that line is long when we're value centered and we think around how can we have impact on others that doesn't necessarily have just me in the narrative of it. That's it for me. Like the end game is that. So we do all kinds of things intentionally. Like at Christmas, we were in a Dollar General store giving away $100 bills. Why? Because it's about impact. It's not about giving or beating my chest of giving money to people. But I remember shopping at the age of 10 with the $15 my grandmother gave me in a Dollar General store for my entire family. And so it's a moment of impact. It's about we hunt, and we every single year we identify a couple of young men that we take with us. We teach them how to hunt. We help them fall in love with this outdoor concept, fishing, those kinds of
Sorry.
things. But that all only comes through being intentional and being selfless. And so when I get to the end, I want people to say that I was intentionally selfless in the way I live my life. And so it involves family and friends and community and just even acquaintances, people that you have a moment that you get to interact with them. That to me is it.
Wow. I don't know how you did it, how you came back from the upbringing that you had to become so impactful today, but I'm really thankful that you found that formula and that you found that inspiring, motivating, heartfelt, intentional drive that you have, because it's definitely, I think that the line will be out the door for that microphone when it comes time to talk about you. Yeah.
I appreciate it, Jim.
Well, listen, I can't say thank you enough for making time for us. I know you're busy. I know your calendar. I've seen it, and it's tough to get in. So I just want to say thanks for everybody listening. This is Richard Milligan, and he's a big difference maker for so many. And if you haven't checked out his website or gone to find, where can they find your information, Richard?
Yeah, 4C, the number 4, the letter C, recruiting.com is our website. And you can find my live calendar there if you want. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Do a podcast myself called Recruiting Conversations that you can listen to. But I post on every social platform every single day. So I'm just a DM away.
All right, great. We'll go ahead and put that information on the screen so people can see it and access it. But I want to say thanks again, man. I really appreciate this.